Hi there. Thanks for coming back to my channel, A Senior's Friend. I'm Anne. Yesterday we talked about the 5 things that you should consider when trying to decide if a move to a retirement residence is right for you. Today we're going to talk about 10 things that you should look at and consider when you're touring various retirement residences to decide which one is right for you. So, when you're going to tour retirement residences, it's a little bit different from long-term care facilities. In Ontario, where I live, long-term care facilities require you to call in advance, schedule an appointment, and they have very, very long wait lists. Anywhere from 10 to 17 years is what I'm being told now. That's a long, long time. Retirement residences are different. They usually have what's called a community relations manager or some sort of sales consultant. And if you walk in off the street and you say, I just happened to be walking by and saw your sign, can I have a tour? They're going to give you a tour. So while that's great, ideally, I would recommend that you call first, have a conversation with someone so that they can understand a little bit better what your situation is. And that way they can tailor the tour to what's important to you. If you're someone who loves to garden, they're going to make a point of showing you what garden amenities they have for you. Many retirement residences will have a raised garden bed. So even if you haven't been able to garden in a long, long time because mobility wouldn't permit and you're no longer able to reach the ground, that's okay. You can sit on a walker and still do some gardening on a raised bed. If you're someone who subscribes to a particular faith, and a chapel is important to you, they'll make sure that's on your list. If you're not, if faith, if organized religion or faith is not important to you, they're not going to show you a chapel. So that's why I'm recommending call them first, have a conversation, let them know a little bit about you, and they can tailor the tour to what's important to you. Of course, when people are considering a move to retirement, the first question we always hear is, how much does it cost? What are you going to charge me to live in this building every month? And while I do recognize that that is a very, very important consideration, I don't really think it's the first question that you should ask, because you need to understand what is included. What are you getting for the money that you're spending? So to my mind, from my perspective, the first question, or a more important question, maybe not more important, but the first question to ask is about care. Are you someone who requires some assistance with your care? How is your mobility? Do you walk with a walker? Are you in a wheelchair? What are your care needs? You need to understand what levels of care are offered in that building. While you may be very independent today, if the wait list for long-term care is 10 to 17 years, a lot can happen in that time. And you want to know that you're moving into a building that can support your care needs as they may change, as you may decline over time. You want to know if you're going to have to move out of that building and find another retirement residence that has higher levels of care, or will you be able to stay there until such time as you are no longer able to stay in that building and you can go directly to long-term care. That's a really important consideration. And different retirement residences have different levels of care. I have worked in some that were catered to a very independent population, people who still drive their cars and go out to dances on Saturday nights and are living the best of the retirement life. And then I've worked in residences where they have assisted living. And when I talk with prospective residents and their families, I've found that assisted living means different things to different people. So I always ask more detailed questions about what exactly are your care needs? What's going on in your situation right now that we can help you with? And what is the expected outcome of the situation that you're in right now? Is it something temporary? Have you had a recent surgery that you're going to need rehabilitation from, but you're going to do, fairly well recovery? Or are you dealing with a chronic illness that is going to cause you to continue to decline over time? You want to be sure that the home can manage the levels of care that you are going to need over time so that you can stay and age in place. They call it aging in place. Once you have a good understanding of that, obviously you're going to want to see the space. You're going to want to look at some rooms. Every retirement residence that I have worked in has had a model suite or multiple model suites. They will offer different types of spaces. You may look at a studio, a small studio unit. You could have a 1-bedroom or a 1-bedroom with a den, or it could be a 2-bedroom unit. It depends on the space that you feel that you're going to need. Some people come from, quite large homes and they feel that they're going to need lots and lots of space. What I always tell people is that chances are very good that once you move into the residence, you're going to be surprised at how little time you actually spend in the unit, in your actual apartment. You're having all of your meals in a dining room. You're going to the activities. They have entertainment. You're going out on trips. And so people very often are surprised at how little space they actually need. They usually, when they're touring, have an expectation that they're going to need much more space than they actually require. So it's good to look at the model suites. I always encourage people to take photographs. Take photographs of the common area spaces as well, the dining room, the front lobby and activity room, the theater, any of the spaces that are important to you that you're going to want to remember, because it's important to compare apples to apples. So you want to take photographs if you can, obviously making sure that there are no residents in the photos because you would need written permission to take someone's photograph. But you want to take as many photographs as you can so that when you move on to the next building, you can do the same thing, ask the same questions, and compare apples to apples and make your the best, most informed decision for yourself that you can. Once you have narrowed down the size of the suite and you've got all of that information under your belt, then it's time to have the conversation about cost. Find out exactly what is included, what is involved. Again, you want to compare apples to apples and ask the same questions everywhere you go. But it's important to know what is included and what is not included. There are some retirement residences that offer 3 meals a day, for example, in the dining room. A full, hearty breakfast, bacon and eggs or something of that nature, porridge, something hot. There are some residences that only offer 2 meals per day. And in the morning, they may have what they call a country kitchen where you can get muffins and tea and coffee, something light, but not necessarily a full breakfast. If you're someone who's an early riser and you get hungry first thing in the morning, a full breakfast might be important to you. So you're going to want to ask those types of questions. Then you're going to want to know about social and recreational activities. And again, going back to what I said yesterday, we very often hear people say, oh, my mother's an introvert. She's not going to come to any of your activities. So just be prepared. It's great that you have them, but she's not going to come. And what I always say is give it 3 months. And I guarantee you are going to call me and be very surprised because you can't reach her on the phone because she's never in her room. She's always at the activities. What happens oftentimes is that when people move in, they make friends quickly and their friends are participating in activities and they encourage them to come with them. So, it may be, come on, it's time for bingo, let's go. And so all of a sudden they're playing bingo 3 times a week or whatever it may be. So you want to know what the activities are. Usually, every retirement residence that I have worked in has a monthly calendar of events, and they will give you a copy. You should come away with an entire package of information after your tour that very often will give you the layout plans for the suite space that you were looking at with the dimensions. It should give you a brochure that talks about all of the amenities that are available in the building, what the company has to offer, and then you'll get a copy of the monthly calendar and a newsletter if they have one, so that you can see what kinds of activities, what entertainment they have available. And at that tour, you may be able to schedule a time to come back and sit down and have a full lunch and participate in any one of those activities that you think might be of interest to the person who's considering the move, whether it be, mom, dad, spouse, whoever. It's important to spend some time in the home, participate in some of the activities, talk to the residents, get to know some of the residents. Residents are so honest. They will tell you what they like and they will tell you what they don't like. So if you go and you have lunch, You can even ask them to invite a couple of the residents to dine with you. And chances are they will find someone who's agreeable to doing that, and they will share with you exactly what life is like in that building. And it'll give you a really good sense as to whether this is someplace that you can call home. So once you've got all of that, going back to the care for a minute, you also want to ask them about how do they handle medical emergencies? What is the process for dealing with that? How is your family notified? And if you're someone who's very independent and you're making all of your own decisions, do you want your family to be notified? Because that's something that you would need to put in writing for them. If you're in a search on behalf of someone who's no longer able to make decisions for themselves, it's important to understand how they're going to let you know if something happens that requires them to send the resident out to hospital. Sometimes we find that family members will say, I really don't want my mother sent to hospital. They're waiting for hours and hours on end, and we just don't want her to go. Don't send her. And what I always remind families of is, if a nurse decides in her clinical opinion that a resident needs to go to hospital, we need to call the ambulance and the paramedics and give them an opportunity to come in and do their assessment as well. And if they feel the resident needs to go, then the resident needs to go, and we will let you know as soon as we have sent the resident with the ambulance to the hospital. It's important to understand too, what are the staffing levels in the building in terms of the care team? There are some, as I said, independent retirement residences that I know of where you have a health and wellness manager who is a nurse, and they're managing a whole team of personal support workers. And the PSWs are trained to do medication administration, but they're not actually nurses. And then there are some buildings that have assisted living where they have one RPN or one nurse on per shift, 24 hours a day. There's a nurse available, as well as the personal support workers. And then there are some buildings that have higher levels of care, where they may, permit a mechanical lift, for example, if you're someone who is not able to assist in a transfer from a bed to a chair, for example, and you need a mechanical lift. Not all residences will accommodate that, but some do, and so they would have higher levels of staffing. So it's important to understand that as well. And then you want to talk about what is the training of the staff. Every retirement residence in Ontario is required to do mandatory training. And I would imagine that, in all of the other provinces in the United States and the UK, all of the other countries would have an equivalent. And so it's important to understand, what does that look like? What does that entail? How are they trained? There are emergency codes that they're required to do training on every year. For example, what do they do if a very confused resident who may have dementia somehow leaves the building and can't be found? What's the process? What's the protocol? If someone has a medical event, an emergency like a heart attack, for example, again, what's the process for that? So it's important to understand all of those things, those aspects as well. And what is the training for residents in terms of fire safety? Every residence is required to do mandatory fire safety training every month, and an annual inspection with someone from the fire department in Ontario. That's the requirement. And so what kind of training do they have for the residents? What kind of literature or information? What does the fire plan in that home say you are supposed to do? In some residences, it may say you are to stay in your suite and keep the door closed and wait for the staff to come and rescue you. Some other homes may say in the fire plan, they may say, if it is safe to do so, exit your suite, go to the nearest stairwell. If it is safe to do so, get down the stairs. You need to ask those questions and understand what the plan is in that building. and how often are they training, so that you'll know exactly what to do. Some homes have, for people with mobility issues, they have evacuation chairs. And so if you're on the third or fourth floor of the building, for example, and there is a fire alarm and everyone is required to evacuate, these chairs are amazing, and they assist the staff in evacuating people who are immobile, in wheelchairs, who may use a walker but can't use the stairs, because when the fire alarm goes, the elevators are going to go to the main floor and they are going to stay there, and you will not have access to the elevators. So you need to understand what is the process in the event that that happens. Likewise with a power failure, you want to know what is the protocol if the building has a loss of power. Do they have a backup generator? If they do, what kinds of things will continue to function with that generator? How much power does it provide? So these are important questions to ask. And then in terms of the personal living space, what are you permitted to do? Many retirement residences and some of the larger companies will have a standard protocol for decor, in terms of the paint color, in terms of the type of flooring that's put into the room. Very often when someone moves out of a residence, we will review the room to determine if the flooring needs to be changed. It may have had carpeting that was there for several years and it's not looking so nice now, and so they may rip that out and put in a laminate flooring, for example. They may paint all of the walls and make sure everything's clean and you know, looking lovely for you when you move in. But they may only have 2 or 3 colors that they choose from. If you're someone who loves a bold, vibrant blue, for example, you may need to get permission to have that paint put on your walls, and you may actually have to pay out of pocket for it. It's important to know that. You want to ask if you're permitted to put up your own artwork on the walls. Most places will say yes to that. Usually your family would have to do that for you. They may have their maintenance team assist you with that, but they may charge you if they're going to help you with that as well. So you want to understand, again, going back to the costs, what's included, what's not included. Is housekeeping included once a week? Are they going to launder your bedding and towels? Are they going to launder your personal laundry? Many residences may do 1 load per week for you of your bedding and your towels, but if you want your personal laundry done, your clothes, they may charge you extra for that. So again, more questions to ask. And then finally, what is the community like? What is the culture of the building? When you're going on a tour, I always encourage people, pay attention to the staff that you happen to pass by. Do they stop and say hello to you? Do they look happy? Are they having a good day? Or do they look like they really kind of don't want to be there? That is a telltale sign, in my opinion, about the culture of the building and of the team that works there. You know, you want people to stop and be happy to see you and introduce themselves to you. Everyone understands what a big decision this is, and how scary it can be for people who are thinking of moving into a retirement residence. So the staff should go out of their way to make sure that you're feeling comfortable and welcome in the building. Likewise with the residents, as I said, you want to spend some time talking to the residents and get to know them and see what it is that they love about the building. See if they can match you up with somebody who's lived there for 5 or 10 years and who can really tell you about the culture of the building and the nuances. That's really important, because if people, as I said, residents are very honest, and if they like something, they will tell you, and if they don't like something, they will tell you. So the other thing that I would encourage you to do is to go on the RHRA website if you're living in Ontario, and you can have a look at the list of retirement residences that in fact, I would do this first before I start touring. You can get a list of all of the retirement homes in the geographic location that you are interested in, and you can kind of drill down and dig a little deeper, and you can actually see if there have been any findings from the inspections that they've done. In Ontario, we have a licensing and governing body for retirement residences called the RHRA. It's the Retirement Homes Regulatory Authority. And they are the licensing and governing body for all retirement residences in Ontario. And they do mandatory and routine inspections. If someone files a complaint, They're going to go in and do a mandatory inspection. It's unannounced. They don't give you any warning. They just come in, and you are required to give them access to anything and everything that they ask for, whether it be medical charts or business files. They will spend time talking to residents, and either annually or semi-annually, either once a year, every other year, no more than every other year, they will come in and do a routine inspection. And again, they're going to look at what kind of training is done for the staff. They're going to look at ensuring that everyone has the correct certificates, that the nursing licenses are on file, and people have their food handler certificates, and they're going to make sure that the home is being run effectively and that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And again, they spend time with residents as well, and they find out from the residents' perspective what is working well and what needs improvement. And then they will deliver a report to the home that they are required to post in an area where residents can see it for a 2-year period. So you can go online and you can have a look at all of those results and see if there are any findings and what exactly the results are. So that should be considered as well when you're touring retirement residences. That's a lot of information for a short period of time. I hope that you have found this useful. If there is any other topic that you would like me to review for you, I'm happy to do that. Please just leave me a comment. If you would consider hitting the like button, subscribing to my channel, and sharing the video if you think someone would get value out of it, I would really appreciate that. Thank you so much, and I'll see you again soon.